Welcome back to the Takeout. There is some new polling out of Georgia offering competing situations in both of the elections down there that we are keeping close eyes on. AARP, yes, the Association of Retired People, who does some pretty reputable polling, has found Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff holding a 9-point lead in his reelection bid over Republican Congressman Mike Collins. But the governor's race is deadlocked. Former Atlanta Mayor and Democrat Keishia Lance Bottoms slightly ahead of Republican Rick Jackson, but within the margin of error, which we call a tie. Our reporter panel is here with me to discuss. Kadia Goba is a reporter for NOTUS, News of the United States. And Tia Mitchell is the Washington bureau chief for the great Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Ladies, great to see you both. Tia, since you work for the AJC, how do you explain the discrepancy in these two races?
Well, the difference is Jon Ossoff is an incumbent, and he's been working it for 6 years of constituent services, getting out there, having events. Keishia Lance Bottoms, yes, she has held political office before in Atlanta,
right,
but she has not been in office for the last few years. She also, I think there are more questions about her. So the governor's race and the Senate races in Georgia, yes, they're on the same ballot, but they are two very different races. I think we should also point out that Jon Ossoff's Republican challenger is a sitting congressman who has his own record to run on. And that record, there are things that people might like, but I think people are also seeing things to criticize about Mike Collins.
Yeah. And this is also the kind of state that is more likely to split their ticket, right, historically, than to put members of one party in both of those big positions?
I will say that, if nothing, it's historically a state that Republicans win statewide. But what we have seen in recent years, particularly when Warnock won his reelection in 2022, yes, there were Warnock-Kemp voters where people voted for the incumbent Democratic senator and the incumbent Republican governor.
Yeah. So this will be a little different because it's an open governor's race. Kadia, I know you guys have been working on some reporting regarding how congressional Republicans are planning to run this fall by warning voters about how Democrats' policies will increase their taxes instead of touting the fact that they passed what is a pretty significant tax cut bill last summer. Why are they doing it this way?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think, every Republican in the House will go home and have to face their constituents talking about rising taxes, rising gas prices, increased food prices. A lot of them voted for or support Donald Trump, and they kind of blame him for the war, which is inflating or causing some of this inflation. So it is much easier to go home, rather talk about the one beautiful bill that they passed a year ago and talk about how dangerous it would be to elect a Democrat, or, how the New York trend where a lot of progressives beat a bunch of incumbents are, that could be a massive nationwide thing that people need to be careful about. So yeah, it's much easier to make Democrats the boogeyman when you're talking about when you have the presidency, both chambers, and you are trying to convince people to give you back the majority.
Yeah, it's amazing how they've struggled to sell this, much the same way that Democrats struggled to sell the Biden agenda. Yeah. Back in 22 and even in 24. Real quick, I want to ask you, too, about this. Joe Manchin, remember him? Because, we haven't gone 3 months and not mentioned his name. And even in retirement, he finds a way. He is launching a group looking to elect independent candidates to Congress, suggesting it's not a third party, but a movement of people that will bring our country and the people who are participating in politics today more towards the center. You both cover Congress. You both cover politics. You get a sense that something like this would ever work?
I think it's, at the end of the day, we are a two-party nation right now. It's so hard for people who are not affiliated with one of the two political parties to advance. That's why we see so many Democratic socialists, self-identified Democratic socialists running as Democrats, because they know they need a major party backing. What we're also seeing in a lot of these primaries is people tend not to support centrist candidates in the primaries. And you got to get through a primary before you make it to a general election ballot. So it'll be, I think it's easier said than done. Also, we're hearing from voters a lot. They want someone who's going to fight. They don't necessarily like that centrist message. They don't necessarily like that message of we're going to try to get along and work towards the middle. voters right now are fired up, whether you're on the right or your left, and you want someone who's going to be fired up too.
From a governing perspective, if there was this coalition in the middle, it might work.
Yeah, but it's not happening. You look at Biden won, or Kamala Harris won districts, right? There's about 3 of them, and they are always contested.
Right.
And you talk about Kevin Kiley. Right now, he's the one person who is an independent, so-called independent, but that was as a result of redistricting. I texted him earlier and asked him if he was going to be a part of it. He said he supports it, and he is looking forward to working with them. It might make him win his election. He doesn't vote independent. He votes with Republicans.
So we'll see. Nice try, Joe Manchin. Maybe, maybe not. Kadia, Goba, Tia Mitchell, thank you both for being here. Have a good weekend.